Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our next episode of Association Rockstars, where we get to hear about the journey and insights of some amazing association executives and partners who are building the industry of tomorrow. My name is Lowell Aplebaum. I'm the CEO of Vista Cova. We partner with organizations on strategy and governance and facilitation expertise, and I'm overjoyed to have with me not just one, but two experts today. With me today is Chip Flater, Director of Information Technology at the National Science Teaching Association. Chip is a mission-driven IT leader with more than 2 decades, and his career includes IT leadership roles at the American Counseling Association, American Correctional Association, which would both be ACAs for our acronym friends, and the National Restaurant Association. He holds a Master's of Information Technology and is a 3-time recipient of DCA Live's Association Technology and Innovation Leader Award. Jason Wampler serves as the Managing Director of IT for the International Society of Automation. 25 years of experience in nonprofit and association technology. He holds his AIMP, AAIP, and CAE certifications, reflecting a strong commitment to staying at the forefront of industry trends. ISA's recently received the Gold Trendy Award for Best Product Launch in 2025 from Association Trends. Welcome to both of you. So happy to have you both with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks for having me, Lowell. Appreciate it.
So outside of the bio, how we usually like to start Rockstars is with a little bit of a more informal insight, which is that we talk about Rockstars have unique strengths, unique skill sets, something that at least in my household of kiddos that we call superpowers. And so it's always a good place to start to hear what your superpowers may be. And so I'd be happy for either you go first, but Jason, you're on the screen next to me, so I'm going to pick you first. What would you say is, or what would your friends or colleagues or family say is one of your superpowers?
I'm going to reference a character from, and this is going to show that I'm totally a geek at heart, from Star Trek: The Next Generation. The character is Guinan, and she's actually known as an El-Alorian, which is a race of listeners. So I would say that my superpower would be that I listen really well. I have quite a few colleagues as well as close friends that when it's time to, talk about whether it's a life decision or, just need, an ear or somebody to talk to, that's how they would reference myself. So I'd say my superpower is a good listener.
I love that. And it's been a few years since I watched Star Trek Next Generation. I have to go back now and rewatch it, though Carolyn Hook, who's joining us today, did just give you 10 bonus points for the correct naming there. So well done. Chip, how about you?
Oh, great. Yeah, I kind of I've watched some of the I've watched all the Association Rockstars in the past, so I had a feeling you were going to ask this question. I struggled with it. I would say that my superpower is progress catalyst.
Hmm.
Bring me in when things are stalled, you need something to move forward. That is what really energizes me and keeps me going.
The thread line between the two of you, and we're about to hear the sort of the specifics around the incorporation of AI into the work of your organization, but the thread line between the two of you of having a focus and a history of the IT realm, both of the superpowers you cited, right, are these pieces of IT that overall, just from a place of ensuring an organization's staff and leaders and capacity to succeed. I imagine that listening as a default and as a superpower, Jason, from not just hearing sort of what the symptom is, but what the problem is or what the potential is behind it is incredibly important. And Chip, like your passion for like being that catalyst is invaluable to an organization that's trying to design not just for today, but for tomorrow. I love how like both of those things go beyond what perhaps typical assumptions would be for the strengths of IT, a very technical and right like digital implementation, and really goes beyond that to the strategic level of vision, process, and potential, and people, I'd say as well. So I look forward to hearing how that you've incorporated that into some of these efforts we're going to talk about. Uh, each of you were kind enough to bring us a mini case study, if you will, about where your organization has embraced some digital advancement. And so Now we'll have a bunch of questions for everyone joining us. Happy to also have your questions as you hear both Jason and Chip share their presentations, their advances with their organization. By the flip of a coin or by what we agreed to beforehand, Jason, I think you're going first to tell us a little bit about what's going on with ISA.
All right, let's see if we can make this work. Right.
Well done, we got it.
Sweet. It's always good when your IT person can at least manage PowerPoint. I'm just telling you 5 points more for Jason on that one. All right, so the presentation for today is basically introducing to Association Rockstars Mimo. That is ISA's implementation of our knowledge assistant. And again, to fully be transparent, I love PowerPoint, but not to the point of where I can make it look like a fantastic presentation. So my colleague Liz Neiman was also helpful in producing this. So I need to rewind the clock a little bit, Lowell, to kind of give you how ISA came about looking at this. And rewinding back to August of 2023, ISA typically would have an executive summit where the board and leadership staff kind of meet together, see where things are, see how the year's progressing, and see what we need to look at towards the next year and beyond. During that time, we had quite a few board members that were very cognizant of, this disruption that ChatGPT was bringing, to the forefront, just, in the public, if you will. And they were very determined to find a way, or at least to bestow upon the staff to come up with a way to leverage that technology to expose or share more of our knowledge, as far as like we're a standards-based organization. So we do produce, that highly technical type of content. But by doing so, it's one of those where, well, how do we do it safely without having the IP just walk out the door? How do we make sure that it's valid? How do we, just a lot of the how, where, what, when, and why type stuff. Identifying an LLM to be able to digest this type of tech, or this type of documentation rather, was definitely a game changer, just thinking of it in that manner. This is allowing folks to potentially have a different on-ramp to being able to interact with the content, and more so being able to find what they're actually looking for. Most of our websites today have a plethora of information on it, but we also have the challenge of how do I find it, or how do I get to it? So trying to get to that customer-centric approach of how do we make sure that, when a customer or a member or Joe Public is wanting to ask for, potentially that particular standard or documentation on how to apply it at their organization, this is, kind of the mindset that this was being looked at. The other aspect of this was we would be basically the first one to do this in our space. Not many technical or standards-based organizations had even started thinking of this, or they were very cautious in how to do it. So we were almost at the forefront of this type of thinking, or even implementation, if you will. So that being said, this was all done in August. So at that point, doing best due diligence that an IT director can do, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to figure out either how to custom make this or find something off the shelf, which really, there's nothing out there that was really off the shelf, at least at that point in time.
Right.
So that was a couple months. So we're talking, this was September. Now I'm in October. We're rolling into about almost November, and I'm having to throw some budget at this. How you even come up with something like this? We were talking to some of the, Fortune 500 data companies, and they were coming at us with, 6 figures just to get it started. And who knows if that's what it looks like. Not profits can't handle that, especially if it's a question mark. So long story short, went through our network and went through some contacts internally, and we came across a partner that we were very confident with what they were bringing. Did the demo right after Thanksgiving. We got into contract negotiations right before the holidays, and we were signed, ready, kickoff in January. Now, that may sound really quick, and for an IT project, it usually is. But understand this, the board basically made it a directive to have this in place sometime in 24. So it was one of those where it was the flip. Normally you would have staff saying, hey, there's this initiative that we need to, really look at going forward. We really should look at adopting it. Flip side was the board actually was coming to it saying, hey, this might actually be a game changer and get ISA at least at the forefront of this type of a discussion. And especially with having automation in our name, kind of lends to saying that, yeah, we should probably be, doing something like this. One key component once we signed was to figure out what type of team was going to do this, because it isn't just an IT project, right? Because you're looking at content, which usually means you've either got your content committee internally or your pubs people, books, whoever it may be. You're going to want that individual or a key player in that involved. Membership needs to be involved because this becomes more of a member benefit, or is it a non-member benefit? And I'll talk to a little bit about that on how we approach that. And then ultimately, we had our strategic engagement director involved, who is our, I'll say not necessarily the face, but the one that's going to help promote this. Just because we create this and, turn it on, what does that look like? Do we have a name for it? Is there a persona? Those kinds of things come to play. Last two things that were added to our team, which I think was also vitally important, was our CEO was always in the loop, knew where we were at, and we had a board liaison. So they were always involved in, if it wasn't the, hey, where's the project sit, finance, that kind of stuff, didn't necessarily get too operational there. But where they helped was with the actual content and vetting of, hey, when I'm asking this question, this is what it's looking like. Hey, when this is actually coming back, this kind of interface doesn't look as great. So it was great to have that partnership between, staff and the board to actually get it to a point of where, we ended up landing roughly 6 months later. So kickoff was early in January. We ended up getting done alpha testing by Valentine's Day. And then we started working through, finding our SME group or our volunteer group, as well as marketing was taking off, trying to figure out how to name this. Came up with Mimo. Awesome. Let's move on. Web support came in. How do we end up getting this connected in? And then finally, we started coming up with this New York Times, Wall Street Journal model of where we had a members only kind of instance where I could ask it as many as I want. And we can show that here in a little bit. Non-members only get to ask 3 questions a day, and the questions are a little bit smaller. So that's kind of where that ended up. We soft launched in June at our OT cybersecurity conference to the board as well as a small student section. And then finally, we launched in July of 24. So what is Mimo? Mimo is actually trained on ISA content, which is our standards, our training, reports, articles, presentation, the website, even knows some of our annual reports, who the president is, so on and so forth. Obviously, what makes Mimo more, or I would say better than just using a ChatGPT, is we've vetted and actually checked the actual responses to the content that Mimo is looking at, as well as we actually reference the content when Mimo comes back with a particular answer to a question that you may end up asking based off of our standards or the website itself. We are the first engineering professional society to have come up, or at least had provided a service like this. Later in the presentation, I'll try to show you about Mimo, but what we ended up doing was to make it easier for everybody. We put a little icon up in the top right. We've got a page that's dedicated to it. We've also got FAQs on how you would use it. We've got a how-to instructional video on how you can interact with Mimo and what to really look for, or how to work through prompts with Mimo. Those are always important. When we launched Mimo in July of 24, what was interesting to note was the amount of questions that we got out of the gate. Typically using the service through Betty that we've got for Mimo, they were seeing roughly 500 to 600 prompts on launch. For us, we were close to 4,000, and that would be indicated here on this particular timeline in July. Since then, it's obviously gone down a little bit because obviously, the newness of it goes away, but we're still typically seeing anywhere between 12 and 1,400 prompts per month to Mimo. What does that mean? That means that Mimo is actually looking at our DRM platform, which is the digital rights management for the actual source material. And how many times is it actually pulling up that content through Mimo? And this ended up being an uptick that we've seen anywhere from 10 to 25% per month on the content itself. Now, last month we had a little bit of a drop, but that's because we're working through some additional, I'll say, interface changes with our actual DRM platform. But what came about this within the last 4 months? Is that 4, 3, 4, 5? Let's call it 4 months. My math may be off a little bit, but let's say since March. Was that we finally had Google Analytics tied into our e-commerce at the same time that it was tied into Mimo. And we were actually able to see full journeys, meaning non-member could come to the site, actually interact with Mimo, get that 3 questions, say you're done. Well, then they would turn right around and hit the join process, go through the journey and join, pay, come right back to Mimo. And we were seeing the complete like that. We had 13 memberships since then. We've had 19,000 or close to 19,000 in sales, and that encompasses all of our products and not just membership. So we're seeing training being done, certification being done, and even looking at some of our standards, which is a fantastic value add that was really not planned for. So an additional thing that I want to say that we thought would be awesome, but not to the degree, is that Mimo will actually interact with you in the language that you speak. So if you are Spanish, Portuguese, Taiwan, Mandarin, whichever language you end up having or end up speaking, if you ask the question in that language, Mimo will answer in that language. And I've got one example for that I can show. To date, and actually this slide's even out of date already. We're at 11 different languages, no longer 9. So, and we are the International Society of Automation, whereas most of our members are not necessarily, I won't say most, we have a very diverse speaking audience from, English, Spanish, and so forth.
Was that intent? I say I would interrupt. I'm interrupting. Was
No,
that
go ahead.
intentional? Your international organization, was that intentional? The design when you brought Mimo on and designed it, it just happened to be a feature of it.
Absolutely gravy. It was one of those where the I'll call it the goal of Mimo was to get the content trained, or I'll say augmented with ChatGPT or that type of an engine, and be able to present it to our audience so that they could, obviously interact with it and find out where they needed to. Again, it goes back to that whole search and consumption of the content itself. When we were in that pre-beta stage where we were having the board take a look at it, the board actually came back and said, can it answer in my language? And this was a Spanish or Portuguese speaking individual. And at the time, I'll be honest, I didn't know the answer because we hadn't used that as our test case. It wasn't we needed to have it. But thankfully, our board liaison had actually already done that testing and went, yeah, I know it at least can answer Spanish. Sweet. Then we started turning around and then we asked, through the back end of the product, well, how many different languages has Mimo looked at? And it was, 9 at the time when we launched, and up to this date, it's 11.
Cool.
So where are we at overall with Mimo? Mimo actually turned a year old last month. At launch, we had 4,000 prompts, but over that year, we've had 10,000 conversations, which is roughly 23,000 prompts across both member and non-member instances. Again, it's not 9 different languages. Now we're at 11. Mimo's actually driving 20% of, I'll say, the non-member interactions to the join application. So when we actually look at our join application on the website, there's a total hit of how many people are interacting with it. Mimo's driving 20% of that number every month. Now, it doesn't mean that they joined. We're at least sending them over there. So bottom line, does Mimo, are people loving Mimo? The answer is yes. Our challenge is trying to find and creating more content for Mimo. And then what were some of the key questions that Mimo's being asked about our standards, being asked about our benefits, resources, navigating the website. So you're getting some of this search capability that I was talking before. And then I will jump over to here real quick. Is this still viewable okay, Lowell?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
What I will do is I will go ahead and ask, I am not currently logged in up here at the top. This will be the non-member response that I should get, which should be much smaller in length. So think of it as like you might only get a paragraph, where the full answer to this might be more of like a page, page and a half, maybe with some bullets, stuff like that. So it's just giving me almost like a standard definition, almost like what I could, query on Google. It's also telling me a little bit about the committee. And then we give you the little plug of, hey, if you're a member, let's log in. If not, join today. So that would be question 2, because I've actually already asked it another question earlier. Here should be question 3, and this will be my example of Spanish. For those that can't see that, or if it's a little too small, I'm asking it basically who's the current president of ISA as far as on the board. And it's coming back with in Spanish, and my Spanish is bad. The last time I spoke that was back in high school. But I can tell you that it's correct because it is Scott Reynolds. And then if I wanted to ask it about, how is 62443? This would be my 3rd question of the day. And right now it's saying, I'm afraid your trial messages are done. You need to log in. And if you've logged in and you're a member, then we can get into more of this verbose type of response. And I'll do that for the last one. And then I think I am done, Lowell.
Well, so there's a question now as you're doing this, I'll ask, because it may be something to show or not. Carolyn asked, not a Star Trek question, but what kinds of terms and conditions or disclaimers do you have to give about the tool?
I can go through that over here on the side that we've got. So we actually went through, and maybe that was part of our, I'll say the timeline to deliver. That may have been one of those things that I forgot to add, was legal is very important. So our lawyer was involved. So over here on the side, what we ended up doing was we had our terms of use highlighted here, and then we went down through basically telling folks, what is Mimo? What are the type of answers you're going to get? Should you use it, Mimo, as authoritative? Absolutely not. Mimo is an educational tool, and we specifically state that. At the end of the day, if you're looking for a bona fide, answer from the standard, purchase said standard. Read said standard. The LLMs are great for interpreting, or at least trying to digest and then give it back to us in a, I'll say a fast type of consumption model. But if this is something that's mission critical, you can't not pull the human out of the equation.
Perfect.
And then you can see as a member, this is giving me an unbelievable answer as far as it's saying, how do I apply it? Why would I do it? Here's the summary. I'm getting a table. And then down here in the learn more, it's giving me links to the actual, documentation that it's referencing, or at least building its argument for how that should work.
That's excellent. I have more questions, but I feel like it will be good to hear from Chip as well, because we're looking at 2 platforms, and so you all may have similar or different answers. But Jason, thank you. That's a great sharing of what you built and how you built it. Okay, I'll stop your sharing.
Yeah, I was going to say I hate Zoom.
All right, I got it. I feel the same way about Teams. Chip,
Fair enough.
Let's hear a little bit about your story.
And you can hear me all right?
We can hear you great.
Great. So our journey starts from somewhat different origins than Jason's, and it's important to note here that Jason really is a pioneer in this area. I mean, coming in at 2023 was very early, and I'm sure that was very, very scary, but benefit to us, we get to build on that knowledge. So our origins, we were actually starting to look at our website, and we were trying to figure out how to make our site more navigable, and how to make sure that we are connecting our members and other visitors to our website to the content. And we've been around for 80 years, and we've been building tons of content since then. And I'll get more into that later. But we were really kind of going and looking for a replacement for our search engine at first. And it kind of dawned on us like, hey, there's new technology here and there's new ways of presenting this. And let's try to ride a trend and see if we can provide a better value to our members than like a standard search engine. So we met with multiple AI providers. We also, like Jason, we landed with Betty. And as I mentioned before, being a pioneer, we were actually able to talk to Jason and pick his brain, learn from his experience, and help guide us in moving forward. So with that, um, I will start. So Adam is a chatbot for the NSTA, and we have about 35,000 members and hundreds of thousands of customers and website visitors. I'm going to group those two together as they're common users of our website. And in the first 3 months, we got a 35% reduction in our support tickets using Adam. Huge impact internally. And our members were able to get answers in 5 seconds, 24/7. Didn't have to wait for customer service. Our customer service team is great, but you would often have to wait for them to respond. So why we built Adam, again, was to help navigate that vast maze of information that we have on our website and help connect everyone with that. Provide quick answers as well. So kind of a dual purpose, not only connecting them with that information, but also help answer some of those commonly asked questions. And we actually trained it with our common questions that were asked of our help desk ticket team and their answers to help provide those better ones, you know, those answers. And so as the image kind of indicates, right? It's with all this content, it's kind of a maze. And we want to make sure that people were able to get what they needed and get that member, get what they're paying for with that member experience. So before Adam, if you go to our search engine, even today, if you go to our search engine, this is going to change. So you got to go today. But if you put in lesson plans, you're going to get 17,000 responses. And we're not really doing our members justice by providing that much. We're burying them with it. However, with AI, we can have them ask real specific questions, and the AI is smart enough, if I can use that term, smart enough to find that content for them on the site and help be somewhat of a Sherpa, a guide on our site. So here I have the example, what lessons do you have involving water density? Now, if this was a keyword search, you'd be typing lesson plans, water, maybe density, and you still would get a lot of other ones. Just because those were words that appear, they might have been keywords logged, so on. And in this case, it comes right back and says, yeah, here's one for you. That's mass volume and density. This lesson plan explores the concepts of mass volume and density and so on. So really it helps connect the member, or I'll term them as a researcher or a website user, with that content quickly. Now, like Jason and Mimo, we have two versions. We have a public facing and we have a member facing, and that was on purpose. The public facing is not trained to the full extent, right? It doesn't have all that member knowledge and those things that are kind of protected under our member value proposition. And then it also, this is a great little tip for anyone listening, it also knows that you are a non-member or not logged in, and it says at the end of the prompt, hey, why not unleash my full power, become a member? And that prompt alone, we have tagging for that, and that prompt has led now to 4 memberships sold. So Adam's kind of doing some work for us as well. So we launched this. I want to make sure I note that we launched this in April. So it's not nearly had the time of exposure that Mimo has had. But in that time, we've received a total of about 2,000 messages. These numbers are a bit old at this point, and we get feedback for all of that, and we can quickly go back and look to see what people marked as positive and what people marked as negative. And generally, people don't necessarily do that unless they have a very strong feeling. But with with those negatives, those are the real valuable ones because that helps us connect some dots and provide better answers. Of the questions that are asked, most, as you see there under topics, most are around assistance with their account and their technical support for purchases, things like that. But the next highest number is really around that lesson plan generation. We have a lot of teachers who are interested in, looking for help generating lesson plans for their students, and we have these NSTA approved lesson plans, and Adam will point them to it. Now we've kind of put some guardrails up so Adam doesn't necessarily generate new lesson plans. We did that on purpose. We had some safety concerns. We want to make sure that whatever's coming out has all the safety of the students in mind, and that plan of attack will possibly evolve as we move forward and we continue to analyze the results of Adam's responses. Then other, as you see down low, it's a very high number, so I want to make sure I note that other is kind of a collection of things like social greetings. Like a lot of people like to write, "Hi, Adam, how are you?" and as their first prompt. So it's a collection of things like that, some governance and leadership questions, just kind of a mixed bag of miscellaneous questions that don't necessarily fall in the other buckets. Now, this is a graph to kind of show off the change in drop in our Zendesk tickets that were created. So we run Zendesk, and as you can see in April, compared with April the year before, we had a 33% drop. So right off the bat, we're noticing a change. The next month, we had a 37% drop. Come June, that drop decreases. But we kind of changed the bar on that because for the first time ever, NSTA offered a super early bird pricing, and a lot of the registrations came in through email. And so that kind of offset it, and that email funnels into our Zendesk ticket system. So I just wanted to kind of clarify on why that we had that sudden spike there where we hadn't had a spike before. The majority of the tickets that we are now seeing are coming in through email. And we are now working on ways to position Adam in front of that to help provide the person who's asking the question with the opportunity to ask Adam first. Anything that Adam receives comes in through this API vector that you see at about 23%. That's the number that's really dropping significantly. Now, this next one is really important because one of our fears internally was that by putting Adam out there in front and having it answer the first question, I probably didn't go through and explain this very well. So let me take a step back. If you click the help button on our website, the first question goes to Adam, gives Adam the chance to answer that question first. Immediately after that, you have the option to contact us directly. So we're not trying to hide people. We're just providing Adam with the ability to answer some of the low-hanging fruit easier. So our fear was that sometimes people might get panicked and just want to deal with a person, not deal with Adam. And so we identified our contact us page as a reasonable metric to see if people are trying to desperately get to a human being. And that's not the case at all. In fact, our numbers on our contact us page have dropped. So we view that as a success. So here's what Adam looks like on our site. And much like Jason, if I can switch over to the website real quick. There we go. Are you still seeing the screen?
We are.
Great. So we have 3 questions right here out of the box that people can click on and ask Adam. But we also, much like Jason has, questions about who is Adam, as well as the disclaimer around AI generated content. And so far, our experience and our customers' experience really is great. That's it for us. Did you want me to ask any question? What would you like me to do?
Well, let's pause for a second because I have a question or two,
Sure.
and then we have at least one. We'll see other questions come in. I, you started to touch on how the platform helps better than Google search, right? This isn't about how many responses you get. It's trying to find, hopefully, a quicker delivery of what's the actual answer that someone's looking for. Could you, and Chip, you can go first on this if you like, since we were just with you. Uh, could you talk to us either a little bit more about the structure of that or like how you've seen that working? How do you make, and do you have any feedback loops to actually do any sort of verifying that the answers they're getting are actually the right ones for the answer question they're asking?
So can you can it, I want to make sure I got your question, Dan, right. Could you
Yeah,
go through it one more time for me?
sure. As opposed to Googling and
Sure.
getting bajillion answers, right? The purpose of both of these platforms is that this isn't about the smorgasbord of 20 million websites. It's here's the answer for you.
Mhm.
From the structure that you've built, either about the verification process, like how do you do a feedback loop to make sure it's pulling the right things? Do you have that? Or just any, I'd say, qualitative feedback that you've received or quantitative that this is better than a search function that usually we all just used to have that Google search bar on our website, right? And type it in and hopefully Google pick the right things from all the hidden pages.
I think so. Let me start with the keyword search versus AI search. The past 20 years, we have all gotten probably as good as we're going to get using keyword searches, and we're still having hard times finding sites. Just the other day, I was trying to find something, anecdotally speaking. I was trying to find something. I know I'd pulled it up multiple times before. I tried so many ways of searching and just had a really hard time finding it. It wasn't until I went to AI and asked a real question with context and specifics that I was able to get back to it. So AI presents like a, a whole new frontier with searching and navigating the web. And you see that with Google's new AI search tool. Perplexity is amazing as well. I don't know if you've used that, but I don't even know how they do it. It works so quickly. And if I could share my screen real quick one more
Yeah.
time, I'll share that. So why we chose AI, as I was touching on before, your search logic, you got to match exact words and phrases where AI really gets the context of what you're trying to get at. It really cuts to the quick of your question. You can ask it a very specific questions that's going to get you directly to the answer. Now, this is just from the user experience, and from a maintenance and development side, there's other benefits as well, which I'll get to in a second. But when if there's so many times that users will try to search on something, and then they think, okay, maybe I need to use a different word, a synonym of some type, but they don't have to do that with AI, right? AI knows. And there can be a strong learning curve with searches, and error handling isn't handled very well at all. And um, from the setup and maintenance side, so from the association side, right, there's a lot of effort in setting these up. Search engines. It's a ton of tagging that you have to put in place, keyword lists, tons of metadata that has to be curated, and you don't really need that with AI. AI is going to go by the content that's on the page. and get the gist of it from there and help people connect. The maintenance of it's pretty simple. You just keep re-indexing your pages, keep uploading and providing that. I don't. Our version is what's called a RAG model, a retrieval augmented generation system. Same with Jason's, I believe. And so we have an extra knowledge base that we continually feed with information very specific to our organizations. These are things that ChatGPT is not trained on, and it's one of the reasons. It's one of the ways that we set our chatbots apart from other AIs is that it has access to information. It has a context that's different than what ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Minstrel has. Then with data structure, best old searches who work best with well-structured metadata. It doesn't really matter with AI. It works really well with unstructured data, meaning large swaths of text, even images and video, and the scaling is quite amazing as well. It really, when you compare it down, AI is just the better search tool, which is why I think where everything is going, which led a lot to our decision.
I'll have either of you answer this, and maybe you'll either contradict or confirm from one another. Christy asked, how is the platform connected to your AMS to verify member versus non-members? And you were just talking about setup, so this seems like a good moment to insert that question. Happy for either of you to go. Jason, I saw you unmute. So
yeah, I was going to say I can jump in on that one. So our website uses obviously with single sign-on. So during that process, we identify whether you're a member or non-member. So at that point, the website has the identity kind of baked in. So then when it's time to say, hey, ask the question, the website is querying who is it that's actually asking, and then it knows which instance it's supposed to be applying it to. That's why you have to log in order for it to actually kick over to the member side, should you be a member. And with SSO, we basically have said, we've got, membership grades or membership types. I'm willing to bet, there's some sort of, vocabulary that all of our associations use as far as like being able to differentiate between who we've got and who should have, member benefit or not. That's how we end up delineating between, the full version and the light version.
Very similar for ours. It's our version is not necessarily connected to our AMS, but our website is. So a lot of that content that's generated by our AMS, the system has access to that, and the controls for whether or not the login state, whether someone's logged in, not logged in, whether they're a member or non-member, that's all controlled through our website too. So we tell it to use member version or the public facing version.
I have another technical question, and then I'm going to go back to a bigger one. So Carolyn shared that they have 30 years of technical paper with standards of best practices that have changed over time. Jason, you were mentioning, especially ISA has standards. I know it's a little different chip than with curricula science teachers are using, though. In either case, will the bot be able to provide context around results, right? Like standards that are within that library, but are antiquated at this point.
So that's where you get into that whole test, refine with your SMEs. And that's what we were doing between that February and April timeframe. We got to a point where the amount of what was being referenced and the answers that were being provided hit a threshold where Mimo was hitting the mark more than it wasn't. So we got to a point where we were like, okay, we are at a safe point to say, yes, let's go ahead and launch Mimo. But what's absolutely, I would say, important or imperative is the feedback loop mechanism that you were mentioning earlier that the tool does provide. So when you actually get done with your prompt and you get the answer back, you've got the thumbs up, thumbs down type of mechanism that's in place. That actually gets recorded so we can see what's going on. We've had some that initially early on, some folks were so anti, AI, anti Mimo that the responses were, this answer is dumb, or this answer isn't enough of what I was looking for. Okay, but it answered the question. So let's really get at the crux of what the issue is. If you're looking for something a little more verbose, were you on the non-member instance or were you on the member instance? And in some cases, that was at play. In other cases, we did have some instances where maybe we were referencing something that may have been out of date. And then that's where we're working through support and saying, hey, we need to make sure that what's being referenced or what's being brought up for a particular topic or item, we need to reference the one that's more current or this particular area over here, because that's where we're keeping our stuff that's more up to date. Knowing where your content is probably the best first step you can have before you even look at doing anything like this.
I'll add that having a good AI provider like Betty, they're really used to this type of thing as well. And they can put mechanisms in place so that if two pieces of data contradict each other, that the date plays a role, right? So the newer content will override that older content.
Jason, we're going to ask something?
I was just going to say that was a great point, Chip. I had forgot about, having the team at Betty help work through that kind of logic paradigm at times.
There's a question that builds on it that Casey asked about the ability to track instances of misinformation or actually misinformation, right? So much of what we hear about in the larger GPT space, right, is the whole hallucinations that are possible and how AI will be confident to a fault. How do you all navigate that with the tools that you've built?
So I would go again back to that whole making sure you're testing through with your SMEs, because initially early on when it was just the internal team testing it, and I know standards fairly well, but I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but there's a couple of them that I'm kind of confident on. I know what the scope of them are. When I started asking it, how would you apply that to, say, the Artemis program with NASA, and I got a really good answer back, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You shouldn't be answering in this manner to apply it. I could see how you could do it, but that shouldn't be the answer. And that comes back to the whole working with, the Betty team or whoever your provider is to dial it in to go, you know what, I really want you to be more focused on the content and not trying to make an answer up, which then goes into the question of tracking instances of the missed information where it doesn't know the answer, where I think these tools absolutely shine. And the reason why I say that is because most of our organizations are content driven, but sometimes we may not necessarily know what content it is or get to pivot fast enough to, what, our folks were really wanting to ask this question, or they're really wanting to learn on this topic. Well, Mimo is able to say, you know what, I don't know what that is, or I don't really have any information on that, and it gets logged. So then if you start seeing everything that's getting logged about, when I go back to my Artemis example, in the space program, it might be time for us to get involved in looking at a standard for the space program.
For us, we do get the logs so we can review them. We keep them anonymous, but we do review and see if there's anything that stands out, and we take that as an opportunity to correct. So there have been not many, but there have been a couple of occasions that Adam has responded in a way where, like, you knew that, you knew the answer to that. How did you not come up with it? And so we just more explicitly add in the prompting, when this topic comes up, make sure you answer in this relative, in this way.
We had to do a couple of, I'll say, knowledge assistant adjustments because of, if you ask it a question, and a great example for us is we typically have a Black Friday sale, around Black Friday. But when you asked Mimo about Black Friday, it's like, oh yeah, I know about that. Best Buy, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not the context I need you to know. I need you to know about our Black Friday and what typically is referenced and where that applies and so forth. So you do have to have that, a little bit of a, I'll say, a fine tuning again of what the knowledge agents are really supposed to answer and how you want them to answer.
Do you have any volunteer group that's a continual SME evaluation, or did you just have that before you launched?
That was just before launched. We're currently working through now teams of, or setting up a team, to who is going to start working on creating the new stuff, who is actually going to be working. Like, we've worked on tweaking the, you're totally off base, let's fix that. So, and we haven't had too many of those. Like Chip said, there's maybe 2 or 3. I think the most we had in one month was 6. And out of the 6, 4 of them were more of the whole, you know what, I don't think that's a great answer, or the answer was too fluffy, if I can use that terminology. It just didn't get specific enough.
Yeah.
But again, in those cases, it was the non-member that was asking, or the public that was asking, and not a member-faced one. So the impact on that hasn't been nearly as high as I would have thought.
Yeah.
But it does beg the question of, these agents are only as good as the content that you have for it, and as much as you can keep feeding it.
I have a question that Ali asked, which is an interesting one, and we actually got a bit of an answer. And happy for either of you to weigh in, or we can move to the next one. Which Ali's, stated the content's valuable. There's many great takeaways, but one piece of the discussion around AI in general, not just this platform, is around its environmental impact. And so interested in your thoughts on how organizations can thoughtfully incorporate AI while also being mindful of environmental sustainability and other ethical considerations. I'll give you a bit of a help. We did Anna Eaton, who's with Betty, who I know was essential to both of the platforms you built, did come back with a word of advice or two, both in terms of it's critical that you're careful in the vendors that you pick, so that the vendors that you picked, there's no perfect provider at this moment, but like their ethical commitments and how they do align to what the possibilities are in terms of environmental and ethical considerations, uh, as well as she made a very good point that the use of these tools actually has value in solving these problems as well. So those are at least 2 answers we got from expert on the call, and thank you for that, Anna. I'm happy for that to be the answer, but if either of you have a thought you want to weigh in on, I'm happy to hear your thoughts as well.
One thing I think I would add to that I don't know if she ended up adding, is that one thing that drew us as we were finding out how the tool actually works is the engine behind it is, and if I can use this term, almost like a modular. It's like a Lego piece. So if we wanted to say, OpenAI is just, the amount of resource it's using, or if it's environmentally just killing the planet, let's pull that out and let's go with Claude, or let's go with Gemini, or what have you. The Betty tool does allow you to switch that engine, not just on the, I'll call it on the environmental side, but maybe on the answers. In the thought there would be, maybe for us, we need it to be more technical in nature. So maybe OpenAI is the better response for that. Where if you're looking more in a customer-centric role, then Claude might be your better answer. So the tool has that type of flexibility as well.
Yeah.
Chip, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's a deeper philosophical issue in hand. Really, we're dealing with a new technology, and as old as it feels, it's so new. It's like 3 years old, right? It's like in its infancy, and we know that all these companies that are running these LLMs, these large AIs, they're not making any money off of them because the margins are horrible, right? They're losing money to electricity and other infrastructure costs. And they need to improve those margins. And I think that's going to be a catalyst to help change that. I don't know to what extent, and I'm certainly not saying that they'll fix their own problems, but it's something that I think is something we need to kind of keep in mind, that they ultimately want to increase their margins. They ultimately want to make money, and they're going to, as we already see, they're already replacing old infrastructure with newer, more efficient CPUs, and hope that trend really continues.
Yeah, that's great. If it's okay, I want to go from the technology side to the people side a little bit. And there's 2 aspects of that, but we'll see which we have time for. At least one, number of tickets submitted, right? That I saw, I think, Jason, on yours, it was like the first or second question asked is like, where's my password? I imagine that there's cascading implications to actually needs of a customer service team and individuals. Is there anything that you could share in terms of how the tool that you've incorporated here has either impacted their assignment, their work, the size of the team? Like, what's the cascading implications on the customer service side of the business, if there have been any?
Since Mimo's been in place, I would say we don't necessarily have a, net positive or net negative at this point. The team's been the same. What I do foresee, coming forward is you're going to have a faster response, at least to that tier one type of issue, where before it might be create a ticket, wait for it to sit in the email hopper, wait for somebody to answer it, send the email back out, and you've got this back and forth thing. Everybody's email boxes are probably already overflowing, especially on this call already, to the point of where it's like sometimes that stuff can get missed and get buried. With a
Yeah.
knowledge bot or something like this, the answer is really just a prompt away.
Yeah. Chip, anything different from
And
you?
I think from our perspective, right, not a lot has changed in our customer service team, and I think they're feeling the impact of less tickets, and they're really smart, competent people, and the answering, getting someone to or something in front, and answering those tier one, tier two questions, provides them with space to be able to do other things with their role as well, things that really do require humans.
Yeah. I have one other question I'm going to ask, and then I can't believe we're almost an hour in, but we're almost there. And so the closing question that I'm going to have both of you answer is, uh, no matter the time you've had since launch, uh, what's one thing that you've learned, something you could have done, wish you'd done differently, something you would have done, made an improvement to? So that's where we'll close in a moment. So that's your heads up that that's coming, but that's not the question I'm about to ask right now. The implication is that the knowledge that is needed to build the base and to continue to feed the tool is something that is not an IT's sole responsibility, right? Like, this doesn't work in a silo. You have to work across the organization. And we know that's easier said than done in many cases. And so just any reflections you have of how you built cross-team buy-in, when often we find in organizations, people in each of the departments, membership, learning, professional development, already have plates that are overflowing, right? How do you build team buy-in consensus to work on this?
Let's start. Um, if you'd like,
Yeah, please.
I think our first iteration of building a knowledge base came from our website, so that didn't tax any staff with anything additionally. Then we had access to a lot of the other information that we were going to uh, uh, continually train with. So we already had that access, and so we would have discussions with our other partner departments and make sure that we were pulling the right resources. We tried to keep the impact down with them quite a bit, and buy-in was pretty good. I think there's always just detractors. There's always people who might have some fears that need to be alleviated, and they should be heard and addressed. But we were able to do it, I think, with a pretty minimal impact to our other departments and divisions.
I would say in order to get to where we are today, um, it was a minimal impact as well. I think where we're challenged now is how does this play within our overall content strategy? And going back to that whole missing components, right? Because in a way, this tool is probably the best outsourced or outsourcing tool you could use to find where you've got gaps in your own content. I'm almost
Yeah.
outsourcing this, completely. And thankfully, it's mainly members. But for us, we're now seeing kind of a 50-50 on who's hitting it and who's asking questions that it doesn't have answers to. And that in itself is an unbelievable nugget. Otherwise, we'd have to have market research and sending out surveys and all this other stuff that, you know, if you're lucky, you get, you know, a 10 to 15% response on, you know, you consider that a win.
Yeah.
Say,
Well,
Adam, if I could say real quick, Adam actually found, for when scrolling and pulling the resources from our site, actually found errors in our content and highlighted that for us, so to help us identify those. So it ended up working out, luckily in the testing round.
Yeah. Well, that's an impressive and useful feedback loop, certainly as well, for the organization's brand of quality. Amy did share in the chat an amazing resource that came out just last week at ASAE from Tori Miller-Lou, Thad Lurie, and Alex Mao, and Tori's organization AIM on how to bring conversations about AI to your organization's leadership to help sort of bridge the gap of what can be an overwhelming topic. The hour ran by, but I would just ask each of you, if you don't mind, in closing, thinking about what your journey has been with the building of these tools and the incorporation of it to your organization from a staff, a member experience, what have you. What's, in reflection, what's one thing you wish you would have known? Or what's one thing you would have done differently? What's one lesson learned? And I'm happy for whomever to go first. Chip, I saw you move your pencil, so I'll see if you want to go first.
Sounds good. I think from our perspective, we started with a toe in the water and then another toe. And in hindsight, I would have put the whole foot in. I would have moved much faster on it, knowing what I know now.
And see, I feel like I got thrown into the deep end, and I'd rather have stayed in the kiddie pool. I think, but in hindsight, it's one of those where if we had not been pushed by the board, I think we would have slowed walked this more than how we moved at the pace that we did. Having the board buying in at the very beginning and even initiating it, I think was a, you know, total differentiator for us.
Excellent. So much we could have kept talking longer, I know. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chip, to both of you for sharing the tool, the journey, and what is a topic that I think I saw there was at least 19 sessions on AI at ASAE this year. So something that's not just part of the conversation, but part of our reality. And great to see how your organizations are thriving and thriving with these tools. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lowell.
And thanks to everyone who joined us today on Association Rockstars, to all your questions and engagement in today's topic. If you would like to be invited to the next community learning event, go to associationrockstars.com to get on the Notify Me First list. Look forward to talking to you next time. Until then, Association Rock On.